Okay, we are returning from adjournment, sine die. We are now on the agenda for April 19th, 2011. This is now the regular session, number one, with the council reseated. We're going to begin the opening session asking the clerk to perform the reading on item number one, please.
A resolution establishing the rates for medical and dental insurance for the insurance plan year from July 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2012.
Mr. Wilmoth, our finance director, anything to add, sir?
Yes, good evening. Each year, our health insurance provider, which is NPR, Midwest Public Risk, goes through a process where they get rates for the health insurance, and they have selected the same plan, Humana, excuse me, and with that came an increase, of course. As we all know, health insurance is increasing. A little bit of background, just to make sure everybody's clear. The city has three types of plans. We offer single coverage to employees only. We offer couple coverage, which would cover the employee and their significant other, or an employee and one child. Or we offer family coverage, which would be the couple plus multiple children, or a single parent plus multiple children. And in each one of those plans, we have three options. There's the PPO-A, there's a PPO-B, which has slightly less benefits and a slightly higher deductible, which makes the monthly payment just a shade cheaper, and then the HMO. The average increase for our single plan increased 7.94%. The average Tier 2, which is the couple, increased 7.95%, and the family increased 8.01%. We also offer dental insurance, and there was no change in premium. I believe this is the third year in a row there's been no change in that premium. And for the first time, as a side for the new healthcare law that went into effect, NPR has pulled out the vision coverage. It used to be rolled into the overall health insurance coverage, but there's certain criteria in the new healthcare law that would greatly enhance the expenses of the vision plan if it stayed as a rolled up unit. So they have pulled that out as a separate coverage and a separate copay, so that it wouldn't be impacted by the excuse me, the new healthcare law. So for the first time, we now have vision coverage is also being offered to the employees. What we have before you tonight is the proposal for health insurance from July 2011 through June 2012. The current rates are the first attachment. That shows that the city is paying 100% of the lowest cost employee plan and 70% each of the lowest cost Tier 2 and family coverage plan. And with that, the cost based on our current enrollment data would be $65,962 to the city and $31,130 to the employees. We've also provided a couple options when we were, as staff, looking at the healthcare cost to try and determine what would be fair and equitable. We looked at taking that increase and splitting it 50-50 between the city and the employees. That cost would be $43,596 to the city and $51,936 to the employees. The reason the employee side is more is because of that new vision coverage. And that would be assuming that the enrollment numbers stay the same. And then the third option that we looked at was the city picking up 25% of the increase and the employees picking up 75% of the increase, to which the city's increase would be $21,243 and the employees' increase would be $73,509. And with that, staff's not making a formal recommendation. We just wanted to present the information to you all. You could accept one of these three options, or you could ask us to look at a different funding matrix, but I'll turn the floor back over to you for any questions you may have.
Questions, Mr. Wilmoth? Mr. Lightfoot?
Mine really isn't a question. It's just kind of where I stand on it. I've been reviewing this pretty thoroughly. My opinion, I think option one, which is actually the second choice in line there, That's the 50-50 share. I think that'd be the fairest way to handle it. You know, that way the taxpayer is only taking 50% and the employee is only covering 50% of the increase. That's just my opinion on which plan I prefer.
Mr. Ertz.
I just like to agree with Mr. Lightfoot. I think the 50-50 split on the increase in the healthcare costs looks like the best deal of the two options for our city employees. They do a lot for us, and I just see that my question is with your chart and graph here. It looks like the employees' increase is quite a bit larger than the city increase. Over on the side, or am I reading this wrong?
That's because of the vision insurance.
The vision insurance makes it.
There was no vision insurance last year, so that of course is going to be a 100% increase.
You're right. If you add that number to the city's number, then it comes out
Right.
closer.
And to be fair on the vision insurance, we tried to take a conservative approach. I really have no idea how many people, now that it's a standalone coverage, are actually going to opt for it. I know
It's
me
not
just
very-
personally, I didn't get much value out of the insurance, so we're not planning on taking it.
That was my
That's
question.
just me personally, but
It's optional.
it is
employees.
optional.
I see what it is. So the entire coverage for a monthly rate is $195 for vision insurance?
No.
Option one. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 7, 13, and 9. I'm sorry, I'm looking down one column. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, 195 is the opt-out incentive.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it looks like a great deal. It's unfortunate anything had to go up, but at least we can split the difference with the employees.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
I would agree that option one, I believe, is the one that we should consider, and I think probably the fairest for everyone involved.
Mr. Kramer.
And I also would be in support of option one. I think it's the most fair and equitable. In the past, we've absorbed a lot of this cost, and in a time when private sector workers are feeling a little bit of the pain, and that's probably a bad analogy. That's probably a bad way to put it, but I just think it's fair to the taxpayers that we not absorb all that cost, and we've been very fair to the employees and want to continue to be that way. So I would support option one.
Mr. Azier.
I guess I'm a little confused. I see a resolution in front of us. Are we going to have you rewrite the resolution or alter this resolution tonight to choose one of these plans? What's our goal here?
You'll just simply be making a motion and adding either current rate option one or option two to the motion that you make.
Okay, I'll make that motion to concur with my other board members.
Mr. Azier's got the motion to approve based on option one, seconded by Mr. Kramer. Continue with discussion. No further discussion? Mr. Ertz? Okay. No further discussion? Once, twice, ready to go? Call the vote, please.
Alderman Azier?
Yes?
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman White? Yes. Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Item number 2, please.
A resolution authorizing and approving a contract with Creative Landscaping and Concrete, Inc. for mowing services in excess of $15,000, but within budgeted amounts for fiscal year 2010-2011.
Mr. Knoll, anything to add on this subject, sir?
Just that Public Works issued bids. We only received 2 bids. We've contacted some of the other bidders that we thought would be extremely interested in it. I did find out that our past provider had won a new project in Lawrence that was around $200,000, so they had plenty of work and weren't interested in the project again. Another contractor said they weren't aware of the item, even though we called them twice and emailed them at least twice. And then a third one was just a little scared away by the size of the bid packet, so they just didn't bid on it. So, but we did receive 2 bids. They have done a couple of locations already because we were caught a little bit off guard because we thought the previous contractor was going to renew. When they didn't, we were a little bit late in the process, so they have mowed City Hall a couple of times for us already at these current rates, and they've done a very good job so far. We're impressed with their ability to get the work and get it done. So here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
Mr. Knoll, in municipal committee, when this came before us, we did ask about the possibility in the future of possibly combining a contract with maybe the Parks Department. Is that something that could be considered or that might be a viable thing to do?
I believe it would be viable. I need to speak with the Parks Department and make sure that there's no special requirements, but I think we could easily address that, because if you take the amount of money that we're going to spend, which is around $20,000, and the amount of money that Parks and Recs is spending, I think is 15 to 20, increases the size, may attract more vendors, such as Sean's Lawn and Landscape, that didn't bid on this year because they felt it was a little too small of a contract for them. They've always been very aggressive in the past, so we can combine all of those services in one contract. Maybe we can get more interest and get better prices. So I will pursue that in the future.
I hope that's something we'll look at in the future. Just to let everyone know, I was in favor of this, and municipal, and still in favor of it now.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Ms. White has the motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Van Buskirk. Discussion before we vote on item number 2. Call the vote, please.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Item number 3, please.
A resolution amending the fiscal year 2010-2011 budget by transferring $13,540 from the salary line item to the education and training line item within the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund.
Our Police Chief, Jim Lynch, anything to add, sir?
We're just asking for approval to transfer funds. We're not asking for additional funds, just to transfer from one account to other to pay for the police academy.
Questions or comments of the Chief? Mr. Kramer has the motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Hamilton. Discussion on item number 3. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Item number 4, please. Thank you, Chief.
A resolution amending the fiscal year 2010-2011 budget by reappropriating $15,528.09 to various Park Department funds, which were approved in fiscal year 2009-2010, but not expended during such fiscal year.
Mahesh, anything to add on this subject, sir?
Nothing to add other than the budget appropriation required governing bodies action. That's why this item brought for your consideration has been approved by the Park Board in the past, and just seeking your approval to get it done.
Mr. Ertz.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Ertz has a motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Discussion before we vote on item number 4. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Item number 5, please.
A resolution appointing a member of the Board of Aldermen to the position of acting president for a term of 1 year.
Current Pro Tem, Mr. Kramer, anything to add on the subject, sir?
As current Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to nominate Jim Azier to the term of Mayor Pro Tem for the upcoming year. I feel like he's shown leadership ability that warrants him to be in that position.
Do I hear a second? Got a motion and a second appointing Jim Azier as the Board of Aldermen, from the Board of Aldermen to the position of acting president for a term of 1 year. We're into discussion. Mr. Ertz? No? Any discussion on this matter? Mr. Hamilton, sir?
I will be abstaining from voting because I think this process is flawed. I am not voting for or against any of my colleagues. That's not my point. I don't like the process. I feel like the mayor, the sitting mayor, should appoint the person who he or she thinks could best represent themselves. And I don't see this process always accomplishing that, so I will be abstaining.
Okay, very good. Mr. Van Buskirk?
I will be abstaining also, but my reason is that I think the process is also flawed because normally nominations would be taken and, all nominations, and then those candidates be voted on. If there were only one candidate, then there would be a proposal to accept that person by acclamation. So I will be abstaining also.
Very good. Further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, I ask the clerk to call the vote.
Was the second Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Correct, okay. Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Hamilton? Alderman White?
No.
Alderman Melson?
No.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Abstain.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Mr. Willerth, for clarification, that motion passes. Is that correct?
It passed.
Thank you. Mr. Azier, congratulations. Ask the clerk to perform the first reading on item number 6, please.
An ordinance adopting, approving, and authorizing the city to execute the First Amendment to the 353 contract approved in ordinance number 4696-01 between 63rd Street and Blue Ridge Redevelopment Corporation, the corporation organized under Chapter 53 of the Missouri Revised Statutes and the city of Raytown, Missouri.
Mr. Wilmoth, our finance director, and Thomas Cole, our economic development administrator, it's always good to see you two gentlemen up here.
Thank you for the time this evening. We really don't have much to add to what's before you, but for the benefit of our citizens at home that may be watching this or reading minutes or whatnot, I would like to go through it. First of all, this is not a new tax abatement. In fact, it's kind of the fulfillment of one that was started 10 years ago. On May 1st, 2001, the City of Raytown entered into an agreement granting 353 tax abatement to the 63rd Street and Blue Ridge Development Corporation for the removal of blight and the redevelopment improvements to the headquarters office of BHA Group, Inc. BHA Group, since 2001, has essentially morphed or evolved into the headquarters of the Environmental Services Division of General Electric Energy at 8800 East 63rd Street. It's a six-story office building. You can't miss it when you drive by. The original agreement provided a 15-year tax abatement comprised of 10 years at 100% property tax abatement on the buildings and improvements to the land, and an additional 5-year abatement at 50% on the land and improvements. The contract at the time stated that the City of Raytown, that if the contract at the time stated that in the event that the City of Raytown did not complete public improvements associated with the project, i.e. the Gateway project, monument sign. There was some new pavement put in the intersection as well. If the city did not complete the public improvements associated with the project in a timely manner, the abatement was to continue for an additional 15 years. Rather than being a total of 15 years, it would be a total of 25 years. The continuation of the abatement required the organization to complete the required improvements to the building and maintain its headquarters, including an employment level at or above 220 positions. The City of Raytown did complete the Gateway project within the specified time frame. As such, the abatement is to continue for an additional 5 years at a rate of 50%. The initial 10-year agreement concludes on May 1st, 2011. The applicant has completed all promised redevelopment improvements to the office building and has received a certificate of compliance required by Section 7 of the original agreement. However, the current recession and sale of a portion of the business in 2010 has forced the employment level to decrease below 220 persons. The applicant has proposed an amendment to the initial agreement requesting the tax abatement continue for 5 years at 50% as per the original agreement. At the conclusion of the 5-year extension, the 6-story office building will be fully returned to the tax rolls. The amendment also reduces the minimum number of positions at the location to 165. In short, this amendment allows the tax abatement to continue for 5 years and immediately increases the current taxes received by the city from the applicant. The action also assures the headquarters operation and 165 jobs remain in Raytown until at least 2016 in order for the business to receive the tax abatement benefit. The alternative to this essentially relieves the applicant of any responsibility to maintain the corporate headquarters and employee count in the city of Raytown. As such, Mr. Willerth has communicated to a great deal with GE Energy's legal counsel. Their legal counsel is here this evening, as well as their CFO. So with that, I guess we would entertain any questions you may have.
Ms. Melson.
I do have a couple of questions. First off, it states that in the very last paragraph, continue for 5 years and immediately increases the current taxes. How much would that increase of the current taxes be?
I've been trying to work with Jackson County to get the actual value of the land. Without that calculation, I can't determine what the new 50% is going to be. And unfortunately, I haven't yet been able to get that from the assessment department. So as soon as I get that, I'll pass that information along.
Okay. Also, on the last sentence there, that it would relieve the applicant of any responsibility to maintain the corporate headquarters or employee count. If we do this year, what's to say that this it's not going to happen in the next 5 years, the whole thing again?
That would be a default under the terms of the agreement if they withdrew the headquarters or it dropped below, and the city would have the option to terminate the tax abatement.
But also, wouldn't it with their original numbers of employees, I think it was 265. I can't find the original one, but the original number of those employees, they are in default of that because they now have 165.
I'd defer to Mr. Blair as to what their actual count is at this point. It came to our attention that they had slipped below the 220 during the last 3 or 4 months of negotiation, and I discussed those factors with him, and we looked at the possibility of renewal with the lower figure as opposed to terminating the relationship and the presence here. So in review with staff, we felt the benefits of continuing the relationship far outweighed declaring a default and ending the agreement and the relationship, and that's why we bring forward this amendment. I'll defer to Mr. Blair to answer the details of that further.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you tonight. I realize I'm maybe the last item between you getting home to your family, so I'll be brief.
Thank you for your patience.
I appreciate the comments from the staff, and to your and I realize also that maybe only 2 of you were around in 2001, and I can't believe it's 10 years and we're revisiting this agreement. But I think from the company's perspective, we view it as a huge success. I know whenever these subjects of tax incentives and abatements come up, the question is always asked, are we going to get our money's worth? And I think the company clearly feels that it was a mutually beneficial program and still is. And I hope you feel the same way, that 10 years later, this was a good decision and the business was able to not only maintain its headquarters in Raytown, but expand, and it is now the headquarters of the environmental services business of GE Energy, and not just BHA Group Inc. But to your specific question about the headcount, we had the contractual requirement was 220 employees. We were probably at around 250 back in 2001, and there's been movement in that headcount over time. The business has changed. The product portfolio has been focused, and in 2010, none of you are unfamiliar with the recession that the economy went through. Our business was not immune to that. In addition, GE sold a part of the environmental services business that impacted the headcount in the Raytown facility, which caused us, that's really what caused us to drop below the 220. We're currently at about 180 employees, give or take. We are also pursuing, there are other GE businesses present in Kansas City, and we're pursuing, if you will, recruitment to encourage them to locate some of their employees in the Raytown facility as well. And we continue to be host to a number of visitors, both within GE and our customer base throughout the United States that come to Raytown to visit us. So to your question as to what would happen if the headcount drops below, I think Mr. Willis captured it, that the company would lose the tax abatement for the balance of the term, which is today, or as of May 1, an additional 5 years.
Well, I guess my concern there is that you did sell a department or move a department out of the Raytown facility. So what's to stop the organization from doing that continually with the recession and different things that would happen?
Well, I don't have a very good crystal ball to be able to predict exactly what the next 5 years holds, but I do think that we've demonstrated for the past 10 years a commitment to the city, and frankly, the business has been there for now more than 35 years. I don't think it's in the business's best interest, and I don't believe the business is interested in any further reductions in headcount, and we don't anticipate any significant changes, but it's impossible to guarantee what would happen in the next 5 years, and the incentive exists for us to maintain that tax benefit to keep the headcount at least 165. And again, it's our desire to add to that number, but we feel that's a reasonable number for the next foreseeable future.
And so this question, the tax abatement, is that basically just for keeping the employees in Raytown?
It was a condition placed in the original agreement in 2001. The abatement, again, as all 353s, is primarily, and really the intent of the program is blight removal and redevelopment. Obviously, and the improvements to the building and whatnot, you bet. We have records of the 2001 agreement, but we obviously weren't here to kind of see the sausage being made, so to speak. So we're not exactly sure why the employee requirement was put in. Of course, that was before we had our current 353 policies and whatnot, which on those larger levels, like the Center 63 project, do have an employment qualification. So I think staff in 2001 put together probably their first 353 agreement the best that they could, and somehow that employee requirement was a part of that.
And then, so really for the 353, the blight has been removed.
Right.
So that really is not a portion of this.
Correct.
And so, yeah, I mean, I have some concerns with this. I may have to go get my 2001 files out and look it up again. Thank you.
If I could just add, just to make sure that I'm clear, when you said that blight's not a part of the agreement, the total cost of the project that was spent by GE, or at that time VHA, is all that's being reimbursed. So they don't get any money in addition to what they've spent. I believe even at the end of the next 5 years, they won't be 100% reimbursed for all of their cost, but it will be all the money that's allowed under the agreement. So the blight was removed in 2001, but the cost of removing that blight has been paid back to GE over time. So I don't want anybody to think that they're now just getting money to stay here for an employee count. The employee count was a side agreement, if you will. It's not in the statute. It's not a requirement of the statute, but it is what's commonly referred to as a clawback to help keep skin in the game, if you will. But again, the total cost that GE paid in 2001 is being paid back over time At the end of the 15 years, I don't believe they'll get fully reimbursed, but they will get reimbursed the maximum allowed under statute.
Okay. One other question too is that within the agreement here, it's still got BHA Groups Incorporated. And since it's changed over to GE, should that not be changed?
I'm happy to address that. The BHA Group Inc. entity still exists, and that is still the headquarters location. It operates as part of the GE Energy division of General Electric Company. So it is still a continuing company.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind to address your previous question. I was around in 2001, and the issue that the business was facing is the facility had been there for at least 35 years.
Right.
It had become very outdated. We were very tight as far as office space. There was not sufficient usable office space. I don't know if you can recall.
Oh, yeah.
It was a multi-tenant building at one point in time, and so it needed a significant amount of work. There were 3 specific phases required in 2001. One was to finish out office space in the lower level of the building. One was to renovate the restrooms, and one was to renovate the main entrance to the facility, which included the park-like feature on the corner that complemented the Gateway project. Those improvements actually occurred between 2001 and 2004. The business has continued to invest, obviously, above and beyond what those requirements were. At the time, the agreement was intended to remove that blight and to allow the business to maintain its headquarters there and have enough space. In addition, I recall the city was concerned about making sure that they didn't grant tax benefits and then not get the benefit of having the company stick around. And so that was the impetus for the headcount and the requirement that the headquarters be maintained there with certain functional purposes.
Yeah, I do recall several of that. I just probably have to go back through my notes and clarify that too. Thank you.
We're all pretty sure that you still have those notes, too. Mr. Azier.
Yeah, Tom, what I think I'm seeing here is that what they're asking is really kind of coincides with what we've done more recently with tax abatements in terms of length of time that they receive those to pay back a particular project for blight. Is that correct?
It basically, yes. Really what they're asking for is the fulfillment of what they entered in 2001. The only change to the game is really the head count of employees that are there.
Right. It just seems like what we've passed in the recent months have been pretty much what he's asking here today, and I don't recall ever seeing in the past few tax abatements that there be any qualification on a head count.
Only on Center 63, as the current 353 policy is written, there are 3 different tiers based on size of investment, and only that largest investment, such as Center 63, had a head count. I believe it had a required 50 employees or 50 positions that had to be retained or created at the site.
Right, and pretty much what I'm seeing here is the BHA is asking, right now they are the exception, not the rule. They're just asking for what we're giving everybody else pretty much.
I don't know that they're necessarily asking for anything new. This is really just a fulfillment of their original contract.
Right, thank you.
But no, there's nothing out of the ordinary in this that hasn't been, that this body hasn't seen over the past year or so.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
So my understanding is that really the only change in this contractual agreement for the 353 tax abatement is just in the number of employees. Is that correct? There's no other changes. We're going into the 5-year period where we're actually going to, it's at 50% rather than the first 10 years that was at 100%. Is that correct? I'm glad GE's here. I think that it's good for our city for you to be here. I think it's good for GE to be here. And I hope that my thoughts are that we should continue this abatement. And I know that we're not going to vote on this tonight. There'll be a second reading coming up. But, I hope that we can continue our current relationship. I believe it's a good one.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Kramer.
As a longtime Raytown resident, I grew up just blocks from that building, and I remember, of course I wasn't on the board at the time, but I remember the state of the building. towards the end before you guys did the improvements, and I think it's been a great relationship between GE and the city of Raytown, and we're glad to have you here. And what we're talking about really right now is the spirit of the law, or the letter of the law, so to speak, and I would really like to see us continue to have that relationship with GE, so I would plan on supporting this in the future.
All right, this is the first reading. Is there any other discussion that we'd like to have on the subject yet tonight regarding the first reading?
Let's go ahead.
Mr. Mock.
Yeah, for sure on the continuation of the abatement. I heard Mr. Kramer talking about growing up over in that area, this and that. The old Standard Havens building. You know, a lot of people wouldn't even think about that one. To see where it is today, a great improvement. Thank you.
Mr. Van Buskirk, one more time.
One other comment. The minimum number would be 165. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're at 180. You say now. How did we derive at that particular number? I'm just curious.
I believe I proposed it using my admittedly faulty crystal ball. We're at about 180 now. We have a number of people that come and go from the larger GE Energy organization, contractors on site, but as far as full-time employees, that number's about 180, and I felt like, I believe the original agreement, we had around 250 to 260 employees, and the number was 220, and I felt, to be consistent, that was a reasonable number that gave us a little bit of flexibility.
So you're comfortable with the 165 number?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to add a comment here just in case I don't get to say it at the next meeting when this is for, but Mr. Sharma and I first had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman from GE several years ago when we reached out and wanted to meet one of the largest businesses in the city of Raytown. Gentlemen have been professional. They've been absolutely a delight to have in the city. At that time, we learned, and I was still somewhat of a newcomer to all this, but we learned that here in Raytown we have the headquarters of the air quality division for GE International. And I think that is quite something to be said, quite something to be proud of here in Raytown. Yes, a lot of businesses have had a turn down in their own staff. Our own business of ours in the architectural business lost 2/3 of our employees in the downturn also, so I'm certainly understanding of what happens with that. But sir, you've always been professional with us. We are excited about what hopefully will lie in store for us here in the next couple of years as GE continues to be a progressive industry leader. And we certainly hope, sir, that you are inclined to stay with us and continue with Raytown as your home in that time. With that, if there's no further discussion, this will be, second reading will be performed at the May 3rd council meeting. No further discussion. We're going to move on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Regarding closed session, notice is hereby given that the mayor and board of aldermen may conduct a closed session pursuant to the following statutory provisions. Paragraph 610.021, subparagraph 1, legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body, and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives and its attorneys. Do I hear a motion to go to closed session?
Motion.
Motion made and second, I believe. Voice vote on that, please. Who had the second? Mr. Mock, of course.
Ertz.
Go ahead and read the vote, please.
Alderman Ertz.
Yes.
Alderman Mock.
Yes.
Alderman Pardue. Yes. Alderman Hamilton. Yes. Alderman Melson.
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot.
Yes.
Alderman Kramer.
Yes.
Alderman Azier.
Yes.
Alderman White.
Let's reconvene.